Thank you, Chair. It's yours.
Okay, thank you, Paul. We appreciate the help behind the scenes and welcome to our first quarter board meeting. Today is, let's say, the 16th of February. Hope everyone had a good Valentine's and took good care of your sweethearts, or your sweetheart took good care of you.
You're talking about Single Awareness Day?
That as well. Whatever works. We'll be thinking about you, Brent.
Appreciate it.
So I'm Corey Cram. I'm the chair of this group. Alicia over here to my right is my vice chair. And it's a busy time of year. Lots of stuff going on, and we appreciate everybody's attendance here and also virtually. And let's just go around the room, if you wouldn't mind. Kevin, can we start with you and just introduce yourself? Again.
Kevin Christensen, live in Ephraim, work for Sanpete County, travel office. Great to be here.
So Brent Boswell, GF County and Nephi City Economic Development. Live in Nephi, and great day. I miss you guys. It seemed like it's been too long since our last meeting, even though it wasn't.
Claudia Jarrett, I live in Mount Pleasant, and I represent the at-large area of the state parks.
Lori Backus, I live in Heber City, and I'm the new Deputy Director of Operations.
Yes, congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Happy
to be here.
I'm Mike Long. I'm the Concessions Program Manager for State Parks. Jeff Rasmussen, Director for State Parks.
And like I said, Corey Cram, I'm down in St. George, Utah, and represent that southwest corner.
I'm Joni Howard from Box Elder County, and I represent the north.
Chris Harmono, the new North Region Manager, taking Lori's spot up here in the north. Yeah, excited to be here.
Excellent. Scott Strong, Deputy Director, and I represent State Parks.
Sweet. Alicia Colthorpe, and I am the Vice Chair, and I represent the northeastern side of Utah.
Devin Chavez, I represent the Division of State Parks as the Public Information Officer.
I'm Melanie Shepard, and I'm the Administrative Assistant here at State Parks. And we're moving on to them.
Online, can we go to Russ?
Hi, everybody. I'm Russ Deadman, Tooele County. I think I am over the northern area and Tooele County, which, is the biggest county in the state. So it's pretty big area. Glad to be with you. I was hoping to be there live, but I've got some things going on here at work. So good to see your faces.
Right. But as a mom,
Thank you.
I'm Lisa Mertz. I am representing Weber Davis County up in the northern part of Utah as well.
Well, it's a beautiful view in your background. We're not sure if that's a photo or real, but we'll say you got the best view. Other than Wayne, let's go to you next. And it looks like it's pretty comfy and cozy where you're at.
Yeah, it's comfy and cozy. Wayne Monroe, I'm with State Parks out of the Southwest region, regional manager.
And that's your office in Cedar City, right?
No, it's not.
Very good. And is there anybody else online? Don't think so. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We appreciate your attendance, and this is a great group to be with, and appreciate everybody's dedication and commitment to your position on the board and also staff here. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at our agenda as presented here? If so, I would welcome a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting as it's been presented and distributed.
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, I've got a motion. Thank you. I've got a motion from Jean.
I'll second.
From Joan, sorry. And a second from Alicia. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we read Russ's lips. Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Next thing on the agenda is approval of the November 10th, 2022 board meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review those?
I did submitted my recommended changes to Melanie, and I reread them again. I think the judge said I'll move that they be approved.
Okay, I've got a motion from Claudia.
I'll second.
Second from Brent to approve the November 10th, 2022 board meeting minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion passes as well. All right, so moving right along. Board reports. Can we, Claudia, can we start with you? We'll just go around to your right.
Oh, goodness. Well, this was a hard time between November and now because I was not able to go to any state park, unfortunately. However, I really always enjoy reading the reports from the regions. And I noted something very interesting. In the last 2 years, we had COVID, which increased dramatically our attendance. Then we turned around and had a drought, which dramatically affected our attendance. And now we have an abundance of snow, which every state park is reporting having issues with, and just keeping parking lots open so ice fishers can get in, and already flooding. So this may be the year of flooding. So, oh my gosh, the parks. Quite the challenge. And I did want to ask before it goes past me, maybe you're going to report on it, but did we decide on where the marina at Bear Lake is going to go?
Well, the decision hasn't been made. So there was a decision to recommend that it goes on the north side of the current marina, but that still has to go through the Corps of Engineers approval process for permitting. And until we get through that process, we won't know for certain. But it's likely to go on the north side of the existing marina.
So right by the other one that's there then?
Yeah, adjacent to the existing one. Yep.
All right. Okay. Well, that's all I want to know. And I wanted you to know I seriously considered, almost did it, doing the women's event at Lost Creek for ice fishing. But back out of this big gold. So I thought about it, but didn't. So anyway, that's all I have.
So I had the great opportunity to go do a little ice fishing at Schofield, and it was terrible weather, terrible road, complete whiteout all the way there. I wasn't going to go, but my friend was camping there, and he called and said, "Bring a lighter," because I forgot a lighter and I needed it for the cook stove. So now I had to go. So I'm like, I'm going to go. I'm going to say 30 minutes, and I'm freaking out of here because I'm going to die on the way home. We caught so many fish and had so much fun. Next thing we know, it's like 7 hours later. It's dark when we come out of the little tent. And yeah, I got halfway home on Fairview Canyon, had to turn around and go back to Highway 6, and it was worth every minute of it. So it was a great time. The water was about 2 feet deep where we were, which was kind of lame because there was no reeling involved. You just 2 feet deep. It was like the 4th of July Carnival at the city park. But we caught a ton of fish, turned them all loose, and like I said, I totally meant to get out of there because of the roads, and it was so much fun. So that was my state park. And then also, just so you know too, we have a Zero Fatalities Committee in Juab that's meeting again after COVID and everything, and we've asked Cheston to be a part of that. We've got all the cops and ambulance people representative. Cheston was grooming trails that day, and so it took 2 to replace him. So he sent what were their names now? They're new. You would know them, but Dan and Reagan came in Cheston's place, but we really appreciate the state park being a part of our Zero Fatalities too, and they're a good way to pass out safety literature and buckle up swagger and stuff like that. So we appreciate that partnership.
Well, next time maybe Claudia can bring the lighter and you can.
I could just stay home. It was worth it. Yeah, she can come. Yeah, it was worth it.
I gave my auger away. I gave my tent away to my grandson. So I was really looking forward to the women's one because they were furnishing everything except the pole, which I had.
Yeah.
But the weather.
I bought a My Little Pony pole. The ice fishing poles are like $80, and I'm like, I'm only gonna do this once. So, and she works. It says not for actual fishing on the box, but ice fishing isn't actual fishing. So that's all of my report.
All right, you got to pop that.
So a few weeks ago, I went snowmobiling up Ephraim Canyon, and State Parks was there. from Yuba. They were there patrolling Chestnut Slater. They were up patrolling. They had their machines with their lights on them to flash, pull people over. The only time I've ever had a sticker on my snowmobile fall off.
Stories.
And Eagle Eyes from clear over there in Cheston saw somebody that didn't have a sticker on. So he comes on over. Of course, I had my paper, but he wanted state parks to know that they were doing their job. They were up there. They were patrolling, and so they're doing a good job doing that. Palisades State Park, I've been working with them. They do all the groom trails up our canyons down there. Been working with them in the outdoor recreation office, and to groom additional trails in our county, to bring more people to the yard to do more trails, loop trails in the winter time. And so hopefully we got the bugs worked out on that. And so in Palisade will be doing that for us. So good things for winter. I'm excited about the snow.
Yeah.
Hopefully Yuba will have a whole bunch of water. They closed last year because both ramps were closed. So hopefully they'll have enough water this year to the boating.
Last I saw, the severe drainage was over 200%. I think it was 206.
Wow. So hopefully that gets to the Yuba is kind of below a couple other lakes. So hopefully there'll be enough to keep filling down
Yeah,
there.
it's below the smaller ones.
So that's all I have.
Cool. Well, I think that's kind of the theme with state parks right now. Ice, snow, grooming. That's what's been happening in our neck of the woods as well. Lots of ice fishing tournaments. We sponsored a couple, so I don't ice fish, but I did go at least to the awards ceremony. And that's always fun to see all the smiles. Kids out there. We had the ice addiction a couple of weeks ago. And then Disabled Outdoors held their ice fishing tournament there. And then the local office held an ice fishing tournament for kids as well. And it was attended well. Today when I drove in, it was 25 degrees. We have not seen 25 degrees in Vernal since maybe December 1st, but it may have been November. So it's been so cold. So being outside is a little more difficult in northeastern Utah, but we're strong.
Do you have bunny boots? You know what bunny boots are? That's the white military surplus boots.
Oh, I need those.
You need those.
Like I brought boots with me today, and I was like, you could have wore like flat shoes. Like I don't have snow here. Like we can't do that. But I've met with Amanda several times. We're already ramping up plans for summer. Yesterday when we were visiting, we're pretty sure Spinnaker will get. It should get close to 100% now. It has to hold at 80% because of the dam reconstruction. So it has to hold there for 2 weeks at 80% to make sure everything's good. And last year it didn't make it. It didn't get that full to be able to hold it. So hopefully everything will go well there and it will fill up all the way. It was a funny conversation because we were planning Paddle Fest with an alternate plan in case we get to have construction at Red Fleet. And, all they know is like huge beach area next to the boat ramp, right? They're like, oh, you can pass everything out. And we're like, no, like that doesn't exist when there's actual water there. And they were just like, oh, like really? Yeah, like none of that exists when there's water. So I think it'll be really fun to have all that water and be able to get up to a normal height and kind of show them like, this is how it was designed to be and how it kind of flows. And that'll be great. And then we're just crossing our fingers for Red Fleet that will happen. So starting to arrive. Did you know that?
Well, I was hoping you would mention the park model RVs.
Yeah, the park model RVs have started to arrive. So right now they're just in the parking lot. And I think the picnic table structures, I have to go back to my text, arrived as well. So for the campgrounds. Yeah, so that's going to be super fun. We've never had anything like that in our area. We went from PPs to park model RVs. I mean, we're like, moving up. moving up, but.
Jefferson's, yeah.
Yep. So things are going good. It's great. The museum is doing well. Actually, their numbers for January were up from last year. They were down a little bit. You guys are on a different, like, I count calendar year numbers and you guys are on like fiscal year numbers. And so, but they were down a little bit on visitation last year, but that was par across the board with most tourism related sites, but not too terribly bad. So Steve and I had a good hash out on what he thinks needs to happen and what I think needs to happen. And we just shake hands at the end and agree that whatever will work out will work out. It's going to kill me with this crisis. But it's good. Things are going really well. And we have great state park employees and they're doing a fantastic job. So it's fun.
Thank you, Joan.
So I kind of had a dark quarter myself, except I always spend a lot of time at Lure Bay, but the light park was so good, and if y'all ever want to come up, let me know, and I'm happy to host them and eat you some food, and we'll go out and have some fun. So the construction continues for the new park entrance at Willard Bay. They've been working all winter. It's a muddy mess, but it's moving forward, and they're doing well. And then I was up at Bear Lake, and they actually had a couple of really great events up there this winter. But I was up there just as a visitor and didn't really talk to anybody or anything. But what I really wanted to talk about, though, is I've had the fortune or misfortune, depending on how you want to put it, to spend a lot of time at the legislature this year. And I just wanted to commend our leadership here on the good work that they're doing there, and are really great representatives for state parks, and how great they work with our legislators, how savvy they are when things have to be presented a certain way. They've been great partners for us in tourism this year. They've joined us we have a new caucus. Representative Senquist and Senator Andre put together a new caucus called the Tour Caucus, Tourism and Outdoor Recreation Caucus. And Jeff and Scott presented last week and did such a great job, and then have just worked hard on behalf of state parks that, educating and just doing the things that they need to do. And I just wanted to say, well done. So
Appreciate that. I say the most dangerous time of year is when the legislature is in session. Is that correct? Yes, thank you. Lisa, can we go to you?
Took me a second to find my unmute button. I've also had a pretty busy semester and haven't actually made it out to the parks. But one thing that I've been working on is with Cortland Nelson with the Friends of Antelope Island, and trying to find someone at the university who can help them or contribute to kind of the educational space that they're trying to set up. So we haven't yet made any headway there, but that's something that we're working on, and hopefully I can keep helping him and connecting him to folks at the university till we find someone to work on that.
Thank you. Mr. Russ?
Hey, everybody. So this is what I've been up to lately. This is my world. I don't know if many of you know what's going on, but in the outdoor recreation world, they changed some new laws this year, and they've had a training. And so it's been really fun to see all the comments, both positive and negative. But it's a good thing that they've done out there. As far as recreation, of course, I've been playing in the snow. I did have an opportunity to go up to the Bear Lake Valley over the New Year's holiday, and I was a little, it's a good thing I didn't send an email when I was up there, because I was a little wondering why the trails weren't groomed. And specifically, there's a tunnel at the top of Logan Canyon that is a pretty good safety area where snowmobiles can go under the road. But they hadn't groomed it. So I was going to reach out and try to find why that wasn't groomed. And if anybody in this group knows why, they can talk to me offline. But it's really a scary situation when you have to take 7 or 8 snowmobiles across that road. And most of you know where I'm talking about. The tunnel just hadn't been groomed underneath. And there's so much snow that I attempted to go in it with my snowmobile, and it's a good thing I didn't, because you wouldn't have got out the other side. But it's wonderful to see how much snow there is out there. Kevin, we're going to be down in your neck of the woods. In fact, this afternoon I'm headed down to Fairview to play in the snow down there. I doubt I'll see any of the parks when we get there, but I'll be up on the skyline, so maybe I'll run into that same guy that's checking. And if I do, I'll have to show him my dealer permit, because none of my machines have stickers on. So I'm sure he'll come after me too. That's all I have to report.
Yeah. Here, I'll just show my little tablet here. You can't see this well, but this just shows Utah snowpack. And it's nice to see the pretty blue colors instead of the ugly yellows and oranges and reds. So statewide, we're pretty much over 150%, except for the extreme northeast part of the state in the Colorado River Basin. We're over 100%, a little less in Colorado and Wyoming, but still doing good in the bigger scale things. So it's nice to see. Anyway, but yeah, it's nice to go from droughts to good years, and really what we need is a bunch of these years in a row. And but we'll take a little respite in the short term and see what that does. In our situation, I think we're going to have Sand Hollow completely filled. Guelph Creek will be mostly filled, at least at the level where we'd like to see it. And if we get all these questions, it's going to spill. And for our scenic beauty, and also for the people it brings. And there's a really good chance it'll spill. It just kind of depends on how that snow melts over on that side of the county. But I think it'll spill, and we'll work with the state park there to kind of determine what we want to happen, whether we want all that water going over the spillway, or if we want to move some of that and discharge it to the base of the dam. In our corner of the woods, Sand Hollow is doing great things. We got our east side campground finished, and that looks really good. Continue to have a lot of great events, both on the water and on the sand that they're hosting there. We've got another, I think it's a North American Ironman scheduled, and that just continues to be a great thing. Jason, I think, is doing a great job there. Quail Creek has the campground wrapping up there on the south and west side of things, and that's going to be a great addition, working on some concession things there. Anyway, things are just really positive and moving forward. And it's been stated before, we just think of the world of all of our parks employees, especially the managers that are out on the ground making decisions and working with the public, and getting the time of year where it's lots of seasonal. So we appreciate the good quality people that get hired there, and hope you're able to find people on the ground to make things happen. So I think with that, let's turn the time over for division reports. I don't know who you want to go first, or how you want to go first up on the agenda.
All right, I'd love to.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming today and taking time to meet with us. Before I forget, and Jeff will laugh at this, but I would like to get a picture of the group before we have lunch. I think we have some special guests arriving too for lunch, but it'd be great to get that picture. So if you could help me remember to do that. And I wanted to follow up with what you were saying, Corey, just to express our appreciation for our staff. We have amazing staff, both here in the office and out in our parks as well. They are the lifeblood of what we do, and we very much appreciate them and their dedication. We also appreciate each of you. I'm grateful for the connection that we have with you and the work that you do to help us. It's amazing how many times we bump into one of you on an issue, whether it's, at UTL, which Joni mentioned. We've seen you all up there a few times, and I'm not sure if Natalie is listening, but just
She is not. She's got her hands full.
yeah, it's a crazy time of year. So just appreciate her as well. And then I just wanted to say, Corey, thanks for reaching out on a couple of bills. It's always nice to have a partner and somebody looking over your shoulder who is helpful not trying to kick you in the knee or something. So that's always nice and very much appreciated. And it also is, to me, it's an expression of your dedication to this board and to State Park. So I appreciate that very much. And it was neat to see Claudia a couple months, I guess it was a few weeks ago.
But I didn't see you. That's the
know.
irony of this.
Yeah. We were at a cheer event. It was Claudia's granddaughter and my daughter with them that day. So it was fun to look down and say, hey, I know her. Anyway.
Oh, cross.
Yeah.
Found
But
you.
she was so intent. I mean,
Yeah, Lord.
she
He
was
was
just
on the A side.
intent to watch her granddaughter completely focused.
Apparently you stand out more than he does.
Well, I will say those are long days. So sometimes anyway. So there are a few things I wanted to address today. I'll jump into it. First is the building blocks. I wanted to give you an update on those. Those are the funding requests that we make through the governor's office, and then they go to the legislature. I'll give you an update on that, and we'll talk about financials. I wanted to mention the division conference that we're putting on this year, and then lastly, I'll wrap up with Parks Pass. So back to building blocks. I'll go through these really quickly. We've talked about them a couple of times before, so I'll go through them and then tell you what's happening. So the first one is the GSL water line that's replacing a culinary water line for our Great Salt Lake State Park. That's $6 million. That's in addition to $3 million that we got a couple of years ago for that project. Then we have $1.25 million for staff. We talked about, Corey mentioned hiring good people. Well, to hire good people, you need to pay good wages. So that's a focus of ours. And this is both for full-time and seasonal staff. And then we have $1.5 million for current expense. Again, everybody knows in the world today, that fuel, supplies, everything just costs more. So we asked for $1.5 million. And we have a special appropriation or request for law enforcement tools. We needed to update some of our law enforcement equipment, and that was $250,000 is what we asked for. The next one is for golf. We have not made an appropriation or a request of this size before for golf, and we're asking for $2.6 million to reinvest into our golf courses. We have 4 amazing state golf courses, state park golf courses, and that $2.6 million were used for a water storage project that will help us be more efficient as we use and work with water and conserve water. And then we also, as part of that, will be buying a whole fleet of golf carts. We have some golf carts that Claudia laughs because she's been to Palisades before and seen some of those golf carts.
Green River, when we were visiting.
And there you go. So we'll have a whole new fleet. And the idea with that is this will be an influx of money so that we can kind of recharge that program so we can turn over the golf carts sooner. And we don't get into the position that we are today where we have golf carts that are 14 years old. The last one, there are 3 more. The next one is lodging. Alicia mentioned the park model RVs that are coming to Red Fleet State Park, and this will help us buy more of those. You're going to, as you visit the parks, you'll notice these popping up everywhere, and it's a way to attract a new niche of park visitors, and we're super excited for this one.
How much?
That's $500,000. Thanks, Claudia.
How many can you buy with that?
Well, that's interesting. That's a great question. Right now, a park model RV costs about $90,000 to $95,000, depending on the model, and we can use them for staff lodging or staff housing as well as to rent out to our visitors. But I've worked with Southern Utah University and Utah Technical University. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing is they're actually designing these for us. And then we're going to work with local high schools to have the high school kids build them. And we expect that will cut the costs at least by 40%, and it could even be 50%. And we also, by doing this, we're engaging students as part of this project. It's super neat.
Like our technical college, UB Tech, Innovation Technical College, we have a huge building program there. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they'd be interested. They'd be able to build homes like for the high school program. So
Yes.
yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I'll put that on the list.
Yeah.
We, what we would like to do is farm these out to a bunch of high schools or technical colleges and build as many as we can, because again, the costs are so much lower. And then we get to work with the students and give them real world
Yeah.
experience.
Could the prison build any of those as well? UCI?
We have concerns sometimes with the prison because they go on lockdown and they're not very consistent.
And they have greater efficiencies working with these others just with the state.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's always a possibility too. The next one is for park improvements. So we have $4.75 million for park improvements, and we've identified 3 or 4 parks that we want to use this money with. We potentially could be moving it around in the future and modifying some of our requests. So I won't go into the details as far as where that money is allocated right now. But the last one is really exciting. Might not seem that exciting, but it is to me. We have never made a request for money to support our retail program, and this year we did. We generate over $3 million in revenue from retail sales. So when people come to our parks, they go to the visitor center and into the gift shops and they buy stuff. And we've been buying those items out of our regular budget, and what we've seen is we keep selling more, so we needed to ask for more access to buy more retail items. And the governor's office, not only did they support this request, but we made a request for $1 million, and they added another $500,000 to it. So it's $1.5 million for that request. Some of these requests, like the staff, current expense, park improvements, and retail program, are ongoing. The other ones are either supplemental or one-time requests. And if you add all of those up, it equates to $23,850,000, which is a huge investment back into our state park system. And I think I mentioned this before in our last board meeting, but the governor's office was extremely supportive of these requests. We did a lot of work with them to educate them and spend some really good time with them, and they completely supported these. And again, they added money to a couple of requests, which was great. These requests were heard by our Natural Resources Committee and passed the committee without any question. They were very supportive of it, and now the requests are with the Executive Appropriation Committee, and those should be, again, they should pass through EAC without any question as well. They are also, it's important to note that all of these requests are coming from our restricted account. So again, this is what we like to call our bank account. This is money that has been generated at the parks, put into our bank account, and we're just asking to use it for these projects. Any questions about building blocks?
Just one quick one. As I was reading the region report, one item that kind of popped up was the availability and the shortage of equipment. Is that going to be an issue going forward, and how are you addressing that anywhere in budget? I mean, because obviously it's going to either not be available or cost exorbitant amount of money to.
Yeah, that is an ongoing theme, and it's nice. Contract, and that contract ended. And when you have a contract that ends and one company owns that tank, another company won't come in and put propane into somebody else's tank. So Mike has helped. I don't know how many parts buy those tanks.
30.
We've bought
30.
And we bought 30 tanks that were being leased before, and I think that's about 12 different parts. So by owning the tanks, and they looked at their budget and said, hey, we're going to go ahead and use our budget to buy these tanks that are already in our parks. But by buying them, we can then have anybody fill them. So, yeah.
Parts they bind.
Yeah, and it makes it a lot easier then to get propane. It's still a cost increase like everything else, and part of what we're doing is that funding request will help with that as well. Any other questions about funding? Okay, let's talk about financials. This will be very brief. We've seen over the last few years, after COVID, a slight decrease in our profits in parks. And I'm going to be digging more into that, but at surface level, it looks like most of it is based or as a result of increased costs. So our costs have gone up and our fees have kind of stayed the same, which erodes a lot of those profits, which makes sense. So we'll be talking to our region managers in the next month or so about pricing. We have raised the price of our annual pass from $100 to $125, and then for seniors, it was $50, and now it's $65. So again, no one likes fee increases, but we survive on the money that we collect, and as costs go up, unfortunately we are very efficient and cautious of that, but sometimes we do have to make exceptions.
Just got to look at the financials to see that we're just kind of back on the same trajectory that we were pre-COVID, or is it something different?
It is on that same.
Looks like we may have lost him in Salt Lake.
I think Paul's working on it right
How about now? So
There, they're back.
Yep, you're back.
you good now, Paul?
Magic man.
No, did we just?
They say they can hear us.
It was on mute there.
Both of them muted by themselves.
If we can stand by for 1 second. So Scott asked a question offline then, about how many annual permits do we sell a year? And maybe we don't have a.
55,000.
Wow, that's awesome.
We expect it. We anticipate that it's sell between 55 and 60.
Are a high percentage of those seniors?
About 20% of those are senior. Are we waiting for Paul?
No, you're good.
Okay.
He lost the YouTube thing. So we back up though.
Okay, let's keep going then.
Yep.
There's something just a network issue in the building. So
Yeah. Shocker. Yeah. Sorry. The next thing I wanted to talk about is our division conference. We have been holding these every other year. This is where we get our entire staff together. And I through 23rd, and we're holding it in the Hurricane at the fairgrounds. Yeah. And there are so many great things that we're going to do with this. We've got site visits that we're going to be holding. We've got hands-on learning, inspirational speakers. But more than anything, I'm just excited for the communication and connections that are going to be during these exams. So I promise I'm not overselling this. This is going to be a great meeting, and the facility is amazing. We have 4 parks, state parks in the area that we'll be visiting, and again, we have all kinds of activities too.
And that's the 21st through the 23rd?
Of March. And if you're interested in going, please get a hold of Melanie and let her know. We are, planning out meals and lodging and all those things, and be more than happy to help you with that. We might even have some souvenirs.
And if you can cook Dutch oven, Wayne would probably love to have you come help.
Chicken.
Chicken.
Yeah.
I'll ask.
Good
Hey,
idea,
do you think
Claudia.
you could take some days off again?
Yeah.
It's a nice way.
I'll ask, not tell.
How many do you expect there?
We expect between 150 and 175 of our staff to be there. We did it far enough out. We planned the date far enough out that most everybody will be there. And it's something that we really encourage encourage people to attend, putting a lot of time and attention into it. So, yeah. Any other questions about Vision-wide conference? Okay. The last thing I wanted to mention is just a quick update on Parks Pass. I synthesized the list of things that I wanted to tell you about with Parks Pass down to 5. You know, in the past, how excited I get about Parks Pass. And Parks Pass essentially is the app that we're using to communicate with our visitors. And the main purpose of this is to allow our visitors to buy you can buy annual passes or day use passes online or via the app. So 5 of the most exciting things I think that we're currently working on is the digital annual pass. So that will be, no longer will you have to have a physical pass, but it'll be associated, yes, with your phone. And we're looking at all kinds of technology where we can geofence the park and we would know that, hey, Joni is here with us today. And so we wouldn't even have to contact you or anything when you roll up to the entrance station. We would know when you get there that you've got an annual pass and we would just welcome you in. Frightening. Just exactly. So, and then it also allows us to communicate. And so if Joni were to have an issue in the park, she'd be able to tell us, or maybe she saw a desert tortoise and she was excited and took a picture, you could share that with us too. All of those kind of things. The next is a digital honors pass. This is for our veterans, our disabled veterans. Right now, we just have a pass for them that they have to bring in some paperwork and physically be with the paperwork when they get their honors pass. We want to streamline it and make it a bit easier for those folks to get their honor pass. The next one, I have to be honest with you, I have never really been excited about this one, but I realize other people are. So my thought has always been to have a passport, like a stamp book for every state park, and it would be electronic. I'm an electronic person. I have a hard time with paper. I lose it and it goes away. So we're designing an electronic passport, but I've heard from several people that they want a paper passport as well. So we've come up with some ideas where we might regionalize parks or put park clusters together and build like a small booklet for those parks. And then you can buy the whole state park system, and you can buy stickers to put in there, or we'll have a stamp to come to the entrance station and just get a stamp as well. But I have had a change of mind about printing those because several people have reached out and said, hey, we'd love to have some.
I have a passport program, you know. It's got a great one, yeah.
So
I'm on year 9, and they're really cheap to print.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's talk. We're designing it right now, so that'll be great. The last 2 things is the boat slip rental system. So we're automating how we allow our visitors to rent and lease slips, which is really a neat concept, and it'll eliminate so much paperwork. But we're well down that road. And then the last one that I wanted to mention today was audio tours. There are a lot of our state parks where an audio tour would be extremely beneficial. One of the places we're testing this is at Antelope Island State Park. It's been well received. There's still some glitches with connectivity, but we're resolving those. Super excited though. And Chair, that's my report.
Okay, questions for Scott?
I kind of like the paper passport because if you have kids that don't have cell phones and you take them to parks with you, that's what gets them excited about getting that stamp or sticker in the book, and they can take it with them. So I just think having both options is a positive just for those that don't have electronics or use it.
Yeah, no, that's great feedback. We'll have a place for a stamp, a sticker, as well as you can see them put a small description of maybe your day, get a journal about it, or even draw a picture.
My kids always loved to do your ranger activities at your state park, but that was fun. And they like having something like fun.
Yeah, something tangible that you can take with you. And the idea is to have these clusters of books and then have a binder with a nice state park logo and information on it that you can then put all of those individual booklets in this binder together.
So
We used to see a lot of RVs going down the road and they would have like a map of the US and they would put a, a little sticker for every state.
I remember that.
So it used to be very prominent. Would you see that something like that would work for parks to put on your car and put a sticker for or something like that?
Totally, and we're doing a lot with stickers. So, but yeah, I like that. I have a national park, and it has all the national parks in the United States. And it has like a scratch off thing. So it's the same sort of thing.
Should on this board have problems with stickers though? Just saying.
They fall off when you get in the park. Apparently.
Like they're all like shaped out, but they like have. Do you know what sticker I'm talking about? So it's like in the shape of Utah, and it has all of the parks, and they all
Like
have
the
like
t-shirt?
their shape. It's probably like the t-shirt. Yeah, and so I don't know. It's really cool.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we do have that sticker. It's about this big.
Yeah, yeah, it's big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and it would be sort of that same thing. Yeah.
So I have a question about the digital park pass.
Okay.
So if one person in the household buys a park pass, like how is it going to work if a spouse wants to use that? Are they got to go buy their own separate parks pass so it's on their phone? So you know what I'm saying? Does the family have to buy two parks
I
passes?
do know what you're saying. And for you, and you only, Kevin, we did this. So this year, you might not know this, but in the past, the annual pass was only good for one person. So technically, you have to be in a vehicle no matter what. Well, this year we added a second signature to the annual pass. So you and your significant other or you can share essentially that pass. We would do the same thing with the electronic pass. So you would have it on your phone. Your wife would also register her pass on her phone.
Okay.
Does that mean two vehicles with 7 people in each one could go through on that pass? Just
See, we're really muddying the water.
Claudia, can we have a conversation offline? Seriously.
I just know some people in my family would ask that question.
Technically, the answer is yes.
Scott, we love all you're doing with the Utah Tech and SUU. I think it's just really neat reaching out and bringing in that creativity and just the benefits to the division, but also just with the interaction with those individuals and stuff. And that just pays off. You know, you're doing there. Thank you. Stuff. Laura, you next?
Yes, I am.
And we're excited to have you here. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good stuff. We missed your predecessor, but change is always good. We have great people here. Just wanted to have you have this capacity.
Thank you. So I just have a couple things. I'll talk about the staffing changes, events, snow, ice, and grooming, some of our incidents, and then we already touched on the great propane crisis, so maybe I'll start with that. So as Scott mentioned, we had a statewide cooperative contract that expired in December, and they started renewing that process in September, but then they awarded it to 2 vendors. One, Feral Gas, decided, well, we don't want to enter into a contract. And so that's when all the chaos erupted, not only with the pricing, but availability and then the tanks and everything. And we did purchase 30 tanks so far. We are making progress. We had to do some temporary heating in some of our places, but it's looking a little better. So yes, very much a great propane crisis statewide. Okay, so staffing, we've had 3 retirements. We had Dave Harris, we had Tammy Wright, and Bruce Strom. And so with those retirements and other things, so at the North Region, I was promoted to deputy director. Then Chris Haramoto took the North Region position. Stacy, the secretary at the North Region, was also promoted under Eric Stuckey under the law enforcement section as the executive secretary. So that made another vacancy in the region. And so right now, that has closes Sunday. It closes this Sunday. And so we'll hopefully get some good candidates for that. There's also 2 vacancies, one in the west, one in the east side region crews for the journey maintenance positions. So Tyson, that was on the east crew, went to Jordanelle, and Kurt on the west crew took another state job. Let's see, at Deer Creek, Steven Studebaker was promoted to the park manager. That was in December. And then Jason Allen moved up and took his place. And then, so that created a ranger opening. So it's all dominoes. So if you can picture the dominoes, right? Okay. So
Where'd
then,
Jason come from?
or what's that?
Where'd Jason come from?
He was already at Deer Creek.
Right there.
So he was a ranger at Deer Creek. So he moved up. So they essentially all just moved up. But then the ranger position was filled by Chris Nelson from Huntington Complex. So, so he's moved north. And so now we have a vacancy at Huntington. At Dead Horse, Kylie Johnson took the new, took the park ranger position, a non-enforcement position. And we have a ranger vacancy at Fred Hayes, and that will be filled through the ranger recruitment that we're doing in March. We have 2 people in post, Hunter Wench, and he'll be going to Schofield, and then Reese Lutz, I believe, he's going to Steinecker Red Fleet. The ranger recruitment's mid-March, and we're hoping to hire 5 to 6 rangers to help with the trickle down that's happening. So that's kind of the staffing update from the last meeting. As far as events, we've had several events. We had ice fishing tournaments, brought back the Quadfish-a-thon, even though it was lawn, it was Quadfish-a-lawn.
28 hours.
Anyway, yeah. So it was 4 parks. It was Echo, Lost Creek, East Canyon, and Rockport. Went really well, so they're going to continue with that ice fishing tournament. There was Fins and Furs Fishing Derby, Ice Addiction, Starvation Ice Bowl, and the disabled one, Disabled Outdoors. So there was lots of fishing events. We also had Moonlight Snowshoe Hikes, had over 100 people at Wasatch. I went to that one. We've had Miravalite and Shipwreck Tours at Great Salt Lake. Polar Plunges at Bear Lake, Hiram, and Utah Lake. The Hiram one, I think, is in a couple weeks, so there's still time to sign up if you want to do that.
Brendan, looking at you for some reason.
Yeah, that's fine.
You a polar bear?
Yeah, a long time ago. Now I think the hole would have to be a little bigger than they want to do. But yeah, do that when you're young and slim. It's quite an experience.
So there's plenty of opportunities for that. There's been winter festivals. We had ones at Bear Lake, East Canyon, and Wasatch Mountain, all well attended. People braving the cold temperatures. We've had art exhibits and numerous interpretive programs throughout all of our parks. So even though it's been cold and dreary, we still have lots of activities going on at our parks. The holiday wagon rides and at Jordanelle and the Fantasy at the Bay did really well, record numbers, both very successful. Incidents, we did have some incidents. We've had 2 plane incidents in the last month. So we had a plane crash at Monty where but that, so we weren't too involved in that one, but that did happen. And then there was a person that did a solo flight and they landed their plane on the causeway at an hour. So it's kind of weird. We had 2 plane incidents in the last month. So, and then we did have the snowmobile fatality with Ken Block in Summit County. So, and then we've had several search and rescues, and they not only range from snowmobiling accidents, but also people hiking on trails and something happening. So we've had, statewide different search and rescues going on. For, like you said, snow, ice, and grooming, that's kind of the main topics. We've had heavy amounts of snow in the upper elevations. You wouldn't know it down here because there's nothing here. But all the northern high elevation reservoirs they all have good ice, up to 18 inches thick. So that's been really good. Park staff have been doing a great job keeping up the snow, keeping it clear so the public can access the facilities. Some people started plowing at 4 a.m. so that by the time 8 o'clock rolls around, the ramps are clear. Grooming has been going full speed since early December. And Russ, I'll send you an email about Bear Lake, so you'll have that information. But conditions have been great. We've been grooming ski trails also. So we have groomed ski trails on the rail trail and also at Wasatch Mountain and in the Davies area at Jordanelle too. So people can have those different experiences. And parks will need to prepare for potential snow damage and flooding this spring. I know there is extensive tree damage at a lot of our parks. we'll have to, I'm already thinking of some creative ways that we can get, possibly using forestry, fire, and state lands, or volunteer groups or something. But we have a lot of broken limbs and broken trees that we're going to have to clean up to get ready for Memorial Day.
Use dedicated 100 hours.
I actually thought about that. We just got to get it approved if they would consider that habitat, restoration. If they don't consider it that, then we wouldn't be able to. But I am going to ask the question.
I think in the past they've been pretty liberal, and they've worked with Quagga on inspections and things.
Yeah, that's directly related to wildlife. So that's So I'm not sure if they'll let us, but we'll definitely try. But I was thinking even like the prison crews or other stuff, because apparently I just heard yesterday the tree damage in the campground at Wasatch is extensive. Like it's going to take weeks to clean it up. So, and I'm sure they're not the only ones. So
we were talking yesterday, the Inland and Forest Service were in the meeting, but about using, they're getting ready to hire their summer crews to go and clean the forests and deal with property and stuff, but using them in state parks to like a training.
Yeah,
exactly. So before they send them up into the forest.
Yeah.
So I don't know if federal partners are an idea or not, but we discussed that. So.
No, that's a good option too. But no, I think we need to look at stuff now so that we're ready. As soon as the snow melts, we can start getting to it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be, we're not going to have a very big window. So, and that is about all I have.
Are you any other questions for Lori?
I have a couple. But first of all, it's awesome to see the way that so much promotion from within. I think that shows a lot about an organization that it causes ripple effects. But that's really cool that this person got promoted here, this one here, and people are staying. I just think that's that's awesome. The other question I had was, so when we do the grooming, are we like contracting with the Forest Service?
So,
they pay us to do that, or why are we?
Okay, so the grooming program is actually run by the Division of Recreation. So we contract with them to do grooming complexes. However, we're not in charge of all the grooming complexes. We only do some of them. Other complexes are being run by snowmobile groups and or Forest Service type stuff. Like Wasatch Mountain grooms on the park and the forest. So
does the forest pay us to do that?
I believe there's a small amount. I'm not quite sure on that one. When we groom strawberry, so Jordanelle State Park is in charge of grooming the strawberry complex, and that's all forest. I don't think there's money exchange on that one, but anyway, so they're in charge of that one. Most of our complexes do go on to, but like I said, we've got our contract with Recreation. They would have their contract with the forest through Recreation, but
I think it's the same for patrolling. I think there's contracts for that.
Yeah, well, like when our guys are up doing the Loop Road, it's not anywhere near a park.
Right. No. Yeah. Like Strawberry is nowhere near a state park, but we do that complex. Yeah, we take care of it. And then if you go to snowut.com, that's where the grooming reports and updates are that tell you when the trails were hit and when they were last hit and what the plan is to groom them again.
Very cool.
So that's a really good resource to check out. And those are reports from the groomers.
Anything else for Lori? All right, thank you. Jeff, let's turn this over to you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make a couple comments before I start. First, there was a lot of really nice things read about our state parks. And I just want to attribute that to our awesome staff. We have just amazing people that work for this agency. And I think you can really boil that down to people that work for DNR and state parks. They do it because they love it. None of us signed up for this job because we thought we'd get rich or get a government job where we didn't have to work. And if it was the rich part of it, boy, you made a bad mistake. I do think that, these are government jobs. And for the most part, I think the pay is fair. And you
incorporate the pension and the medical benefits and everything that comes with it. It's a pretty stinking cool opportunity. But going back to our staff, and I see this across the nation when we go to national conferences and we get to know staff from other states, it's amazing that you see the same thing. The people that work for state parks love what they do. And when you love what you do, it shows in your work product. And like I say, we just have amazing people, and I'm so appreciative of that. And speaking of that, I'm just so happy to have. Well, I'm very sad to see Dave go, and I kept talking to him. You can't leave. We want you to stay another 5-10 years because you did such a good job. I'm so happy to have Lori fill that position. Lori comes with a tremendous background in state parks, and talk about someone who loves her job and is dedicated, and then get Chris to fill her shoes. Many of you already know Chris, and if you don't know him, you're going to find that he is equally, if not more passionate than the rest of our employees. Anyway, they're in these positions because they're superstars. These are important positions for our agency, and I just couldn't be happier to have them on our team. So welcome to both of you, and thank you to all of you, our board members, for the support that you give us, and you tell us a lot of really nice things. I do want to encourage you to bring challenges and issues to us as well. And Russ, I appreciate the comment about the tunnel up at Bear Lake. I know exactly which one that you're talking about. And when there are issues, we need to hear about them so we can address those and take care of it. But just appreciate your support and dedication to our agency. What I thought that I would do was cover some of the legislative stuff that we're tracking. Obviously, we're quite busy with the session. There's a lot of stuff going on for all state agencies, and we're no exception to that. There are a lot of things that happen on the Hill, bills that are running through that either have a direct or indirect impact on what we do. And so, everyone that's involved in running an agency needs to be familiar with what's going on up there, because if you don't, it's going to go on without you, and sometimes with negative impacts to the agency. So we've been spending a lot of time up there. We got our appropriations presentation completed. I think it was the second week of the session. I think it went really well. We had a lot of really good things to talk about, and Scott went over the primary purpose for that presentation is to review our building, they call them building block requests, which is basically just us getting access to, we like to call it our bank account or our restricted account that's built from the fees that we collect in our state parks. But that went well, and then we presented last week at the tour conference, the recreation caucus that Joan brought up. And I think that's a new caucus that was just created this year, run by Representative Stenquist and Senator Andrade. But I think it's really cool that they're focusing on recreation, because it's clear to me that the legislature and many important people have grasped the importance and the impact that tourism has on this state. And state parks is a big player of that. And it's really cool to be able to go up there and talk to legislators. That the point of the caucus, I believe, is to share information and get legislators familiar with what's happening in recreation and how bills that are running through the sessions might impact recreation. And it's just a great opportunity to be able to have those conversations. There's one more meeting, tour caucus meeting set for this session. I believe it's next Thursday, a week from.
Thursday, 7 o'clock, room 444 in the captain.
Yep.
445.
And you can zoom in as well.
Yeah, you
That's
can
what I
zoom in
do.
as well. Yeah.
And they serve breakfast, so.
Melanie, I'll send you the link. You can send it out. It'll be
It's just a really cool opportunity to be able to talk about recreation and talk about what we do as a state park system. And obviously there's a lot of other players in recreation, but yeah, tune in if you get an opportunity. And I know they'll be hosting more of these caucus meetings throughout the year. So it's not just during the session, and keeps the conversation in the forefront. So I just thought I would really quickly review some of the bills that we're tracking, and there's many more than these, but these are the ones that have more of a direct impact on what we do for state parks. And then I'm hoping we have a little bit of time. I wanted to show you show it during our appropriations presentation. It was something that Devin and Lindsay and many of our teams spent a lot of time on, and I think it really turned out well. I'll just go through the bills. House Bill 55. It's about OHV registration requirements. And Claudia may ask, why are we tracking that? That's recreation. I'll just beat you to the punch, Claudia. But we are tracking the off-highway vehicle and boating related bills because they still have a direct impact on our agency. Those programs are a big part of what happens in our state parks. And we're, like Lori mentioned, we're contracting with Division of Recreation to continue to do that law enforcement, search and rescue, and education work for both of the programs. So they have a big impact on what we do with state parks. House Bill 55.
What do you want to do? What's the issue with the bill is what I'm asking.
That's where I'm getting. So House Bill 55 is really quite easy. It's just exempting snowmobiles from having to have the license plate that was required from a bill last session that required license plates to be put on off-highway vehicles, including snowmobiles. I think it was a mistake. There's really nowhere to put a license plate on a snowmobile, and so they exempted snowmobiles. Dirt bikes were already exempted for the same reason, but four-wheelers, side-by-sides, other machines like that are still required to have the license plate. So that one was really quite easy. House Bill 93, outdoor recreation modifications. Representative Stenquist is running that one. And that one basically made a change in the grant program that the Office of Outdoor Recreation runs, where previously state agencies couldn't qualify for those grants to invest in recreation infrastructure, and now state agencies can. So that's a really good one, a good change for that program. That one's already passed through the House and Senate, so it's just awaiting signature. So it looks like it's a done deal. House Bill 188, golf-related water modifications is what it's called, Representative Welton. This one is being held in the Natural Resources Standing Committee. Not sure if it's going to move out, but the point of this bill was to track water usage at golf courses, not just state golf courses, but golf courses throughout the state, right? Correct. That one's held up. There was a substitute that came with that bill. The substitute was to ask USU to do a water study on how water is used at our golf courses and make recommendations for better conservation, basically. Like I say, that bill is being held. Not sure if it's going to move forward. House Bill 200, motor vehicle registration. This one kind of created a problem for law enforcement for off-highway vehicle registration enforcement and eliminated the transport part of the code that allowed a citation to be issued for transporting an off-highway vehicle with expired registration. You may think or ask yourself, why the heck would you want to cite someone transporting an off-highway vehicle? And I'm betting that this one stems to an unfortunate situation where someone was transporting a machine for a reason that maybe they're taking it to the shop. I believe that's what the representative, the example that she used, and got a citation along the way. The hard part about this one is a lot of people come out to Little Sahara or to Sand Mountain, to Sand Hollow State Park, and they have all the machines loaded with obviously the intention to use them. And where we could check those vehicles for compliance in the past and issue a citation if they weren't registered, now we can't unless the machine actually hits the ground. What I see happening with this change is kind of a cat and mouse situation where someone will use a machine and maybe they'll see Kevin will see the park ranger, and so he'll race to the trailer and get it up on the trailer. I wasn't using it, and it just makes it a lot more difficult for law enforcement to enforce that law. And it's kind of unfortunate, a lot of times when maybe there was an abuse of an opportunity to enforce statute, created an issue like this, and now it's just going to make it harder to enforce that law. So anyway, we'll do the best that we can with that one. House Bill 224. the outdoor recreation initiative. This one, I believe, was an effort to encourage the Office of Outdoor Recreation, our sister agency, to come up with statewide recreation priorities for funding that comes to their agency to go towards outdoor recreation investments. So that's how I chalked that one up. It's already passed through the House and Senate and awaiting signature. House Bill 274, Adopt the Outdoors. This one's currently being held in the House committee. It basically creates a program where a person or an entity can adopt a recreation area or a recreation facility. And I think of the highway trash cleanup program where you can adopt a mile to pick up trash. This is kind of on the recreation end. It's run by Representative Owens. He's a great supporter of recreation. And this would allow an opportunity for, like I say, a person or an entity to adopt a recreation facility and get recognized for their work in maintaining or improving that facility. It's being held. It's been held since February 10th, so I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. 274. House Bill 299. This legislation, this bill, was creating a lot of concern for us when it first came out earlier in the session. It was a two-part bill. One part was going to create a surcharge for all entry into our water parks, our state park water parks where we have reservoirs. It was going to add $1 surcharge for every person that came into the park with the intention to use that money that was generated. I think we figured it was going to generate somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.7 million to go towards water facility maintenance, with the argument that the people that come in and use the facility at these reservoirs have an impact on. So the specific example was boats. The wakeboard boats that go around in the reservoirs are creating waves that's leading to erosion, and the water managing companies needed a way to be able to address that issue. We were very concerned that this bill was going to open basically Pandora's box, and every entity that felt that they were impacted by recreation in one way or another, whether it was water managers or law enforcement or road departments or what have you, would also want us to start collecting money for them. And you can imagine what this would do to our fee structure. And you know, it was really leading down a road towards we would become a bill collecting agency and lose the ability to be able to generate enough money to pay our own way. Long story short, that part was eliminated from the bill. The remaining part is to take boat registration money and dedicate a portion of that boat registration money towards the concern that Representative Snyder had in this bill. Basically what it does, if you remember, Representative Noel 5 or 6 years ago ran a bill to take off-highway vehicle registration money that was previously going to the counties where they were registered and divert that money back into off-highway vehicle program usage. This would do the same for boating. And so it's actually a really good thing for the Division of Outdoor Recreation because it's creating a new grant program where it'll generate money that can be invested back into boating opportunities throughout the state. So had kind of a negative turn into a positive on that one. And of course, that one is House Bill 299. Almost done. House Bill 384, Outdoor Recreation Infrastructure Amendments. This bill is a continuation from a bill last session that diverted a portion of current sales tax money to go towards recreation investment for recreation infrastructure investment. And last year, state parks received $15 million from this fund and to invest in outdoor recreation infrastructure projects. This year, they've got $20 million currently earmarked to go towards state parks for the same thing. 20 million to state parks, 15.2 million to the Division of Recreation for outdoor recreation infrastructure projects. This bill was heard in committee yesterday, and it could change direction with the funding based on some comments from Representative Snyder, and we're following up on that, but we're watching this one really closely with fingers crossed that it'll move forward as it's currently written. And the beauty of this money, this new funding source, is it's ongoing money that we can invest in recreation, and it'll have a huge impact on what we can do at our state parks. I'm almost done. Two more. Senate Bill 112, Aquatic Invasive Species Amendments. This is Representative Sandel that's running this one. There was a fee for aquatic invasive species protection at our water bodies that was on the boat registration. It was found out after the bill was created that the Coast Guard doesn't allow that to be collected through the, I'm really summarizing, and hopefully I'm not getting this wrong, Shane, but Coast Guard threw up a red flag and said you can't collect that money through the boat registration process. So this bill is finding another way to be able to continue to collect that money to go into protecting our lakes and reservoirs from quagga invasion, and creates another sticker for Kevin to put on his boat to show that he's paid his AISB and taking his part in funding that program. That's the Reader's Digest version of that one. Last one. I saved the best one for last one. I'm being a little facetious. Senate Bill 210, state golf course amendments. I think Claudia is going to like this one the most. This one separates our golf courses in our state parks from the state park system and creates a new golf authority, which is basically a new entity that would run the state golf courses. Our perspective on this one is this is not a good thing for our state parks. More on the statewide impact level. This gives this golf authority the opportunity to borrow money through issuing bonds to invest money in the golf courses. There's some concerns about what happens in the future by doing that. If you're familiar at all with the Soldier Hollow Golf Course and the bond that we currently have on that, we've been criticized for the last 2 decades for having that loan payment to pay and essentially subsidizing golf because of it. We don't believe in borrowing money and trying to pay off that money at the same time that you're trying to pay for recreation facilities. It's a philosophical thing, but there's some concerns with that. It also gives this golf authority the ability to hire contractors to run the golf courses. There's some concerns about the long-term impacts on that and what happens at the ends of those management terms. There's concerns about losing efficiencies. There's great efficiencies that you have when you're running these facilities that are very integrated in our current state parks where they're located, and you can share staff, you can share resources, you can share equipment, and this would, in our mind, creates duplication with a lot of those efforts. And so we're watching this one very, very closely. It's currently on the Senate floor. It's been circled and awaiting its 3rd reading. But this one is definitely a concern and would have an impact on our state park system. So we're watching it closely. And if you want more information on it, I'm happy to talk offline after the meeting. Those are the bills that I had. There were 2 requests for appropriations that legislators made that have direct impact on state parks. Representative Elison asked for another $13 million for Utah Raptors State Park. This request, so these RFAs, they call them, are not in the governor's budget. So state parks has to take a neutral stance with anything that's not in the governor's budget. But we would happily welcome this money to come because that just happens to be the amount we're short on building that new state park. We've really struggled with finding water there. We're in the process of drilling another well. And just like with pretty much every other construction project, there's unfortunately been a lot of setbacks and cost increases that weren't anticipated when that was first estimated. The other RFA is for $15 million to build the theater that I believe I mentioned last board meeting. That's a part of the Antelope Island Visitor Center improvement. And this theater will host the film, the IMAX style film that was funded last session to educate visitors about the importance of the Great Salt Lake. So we'll see what happens in those.
There was one. Oh, sorry. Did you have the?
Oh yeah. You want to talk about the other RFA?
Sure. It's a smaller RFA, but there was a request for $500,000 from Representative Brooks to support Parks Pass. And that would allow us to use the $500,000 that we needed to, would allow us to be more nimble if something came up, we needed to hire a programmer to develop something instead of going through the whole appropriation cycle of waiting to do that.
Thank you. I forgot about that one. And then the last big request that happened this session through a different process, through DFCM. I can never remember what DFCM is. It's our facilities management arm of state government. In a process that we've been able to get general fund money to go towards our museum and heritage parks. We've talked about that in previous meetings, but there was a request that was made for $17 million to build a museum at Camp Floyd State Park. If funded, this would be an absolute game changer for Camp Floyd. When I talk about worst office facilities in our state park system, Camp Floyd comes out at the very top. We had a picture. I wish I had a presentation to show you, but we had a picture of the office situation with our 2 full-time employees at that park, our only full-time employees at that park. And their chairs, when they're both sitting in their chairs, are literally right up against each other. And it's no exaggeration. That's how close it is. They have to walk a football field across the park to use the restroom. There's a lot of problems, but that's not why we want to spend $17 million. It's a piece of why. But our museum there is in the old commissary building, which is about the size of a tough shed. And we could do so much more there if we had an adequate facility. And building this museum would just completely transform that park. Unfortunately, I've heard that it didn't rank out very high in the ranking system. It was 59 out of 71. We were hoping that it would do better. But as Scott said, really all of these funding requests boil down to what the Executive Appropriations Committee decides to do in the final days of the session. And so hopefully there's hope for that one. A couple things that are helpful with this ask is there is already a $400,000 contribution that's coming from Utah County towards this effort and a $300,000 contribution from state history. So they're relatively small numbers, but anytime you have a matching partner, it always helps motivate projects to get funded. Melanie, can you share those slides?
Mm-hmm. Hopefully.
So Devin and Melanie were working at the last minute because I thought we need to show these slides and the presentation. So hopefully this works.
Is it Fairfield City this might be there too?
Yes. Oh, I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. Fairfield City is actually donating the land that we would need to build the parking lot adjacent to the museum. And they're huge partners in this as well. And, you know, it would be a game changer for them. So while Melanie's pulling that up, I thought I would just finish with an update on our construction projects. It's one of the most exciting things that we have going on top of all the events and everything, all the other activities that are going on in our state parks. But just from the tremendously huge influx of money that came to state parks over the last 3 sessions, I mentioned during our appropriations committee that state parks received over $200 million in state parks revenue through our restricted fees account, our bank account, a combination of that and general fund money to build 2 new state parks and do about a dozen-ish major construction projects where we're building new campgrounds, we're building expanding parking, we're adding beach access and beach trails to our state park system. But it's going to make a huge difference. We've been working on these projects for, like I say, the last 3 years, and it's been kind of frustrating because there's so much minutia that you have to work through to get to the point where you actually are pushing dirt, permitting to get and approvals and just the state process of acquiring bids and working through all that process. Anyway, we're finally getting things done. Can you make that? Are they seeing that online?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a way to make that a little bit bigger?
Well, they're seeing that whole screen on their end. It's just not what you're seeing.
We'll enjoy it as it is then. So I think Corey mentioned the campground at Sand Hollow State Park. And just like every one of our state park campgrounds, if you don't book them the day they come out on the reservation system, they're gone. There's so much demand for camping in our state parks. This one's about a 35 unit campground. It's kind of hard to see on that picture, but it's a full service, full hookup campground. It's completed now. We're going to be hosting a ribbon cutting on March 23rd, and love to see you all there. March 23rd is the last day of our employee conference, so if you happen to come down for that, we conveniently scheduled it for right after lunch of that conference. So we're excited to cut the ribbon on that one. You also see Rockport State Park up there. That's a new day use area on the, what is that, north side of Rockport as you drive past the boat ramp. That added another, I want to say 40 or 50 parking stalls, some shade shelters, and beach access down to Rockport Reservoir. It's just a really cool facility. It's done. We're just waiting for spring to hold a ribbon cutting ceremony, and of course we'll invite you to that one as well. The other one up there is Echo, and that one is mostly done. We have the access open for ice fishermen or ice anglers, but we'll be doing the ribbon cutting ceremony on that one. Others that are getting super close are, let's see, Deer Creek State Park. We have a new campground there. Is there? I think there might be another slide. Okay. Escalante, I'll just go through the pictures, is well underway. That's another, I think, about 30 unit campground, and some of the park model RVs, I like to call them cottages, that Scott talked about, are going to be there. Deer Creek State Park, I think many of you were there on the tour at the previous board meeting, but if you weren't, it's hard to see from that picture, but it is a spectacular location perched right up above the Deer Creek Reservoir. It's going to be an awesome campground. Quail Creek State Park in Corey's neighborhood, another campground that we're building there that basically doubles the size of our camping facility. And I think equally important to the added sites, we're going to actually have showers there for our guests. We've never had showers at Quail Creek, and a dump station. I know that sounds crazy to be excited about, but I've camped at Quail Creek State Park. I remember I was camping there last spring, and I'm like, Candace, you don't have a dump station? What the heck were we thinking? Why do we have a dump station here? So we're adding a dump station, and many of these sites have full hookups, so you won't need a dump station. And then last one on there is Wasatch Mountain State Park, but a new campground at Soldier Hollow. I'm just so excited to actually show progress on many of these projects, and there's many more. But just so I don't use any more time, I wanted to play the video that we played at our presentation, and then I'll take any questions you have. Hopefully it works.
Melanie, there's no sound on our end.
Not getting sound on the. So you can see it. Please.
Oh, it looks like it sounds like we had some technical difficulties. We're gonna send a link to this. So if you were able to show this.
Yeah.
I put it in my.
Oh, is it?
I put it in my section of the report because I thought you might do this, and I was worried.
I
this
should
might
have known. And I want to say hats off to Devin and Scott and Lindsay and our team that put this thing together. It couldn't have turned out better. And it was so awesome to be able to show this to our appropriations committee, to show it at the caucus. And of course, we're sharing it on social media, but it just tells a really great story about what State Parks does and how it not only benefits our visitors, but also our local communities in the state of Utah. So just super excited about it. That's all I had, unless any of you have any questions.
The bill about the golf, what do you think it's going to pass? Or are you allowed to even say?
Well, what I can say is the floor debate at the Senate had quite a few really good questions, thankfully, and that's what we're hoping for, is that there's questions asked. You know, sometimes you see bills run through and there are few to no questions, and you just scratch your head and think, you know, these are major changes. You know, you hope that there's debate and discussion about it, and I'm just hoping that there's more of that. So whatever they end up deciding doing is beneficial to the state of Utah, and honestly, that's what we want. But we do have real concerns about the way it's currently written. I believe that they're working on some modifications of the bill, and I'm hoping that pushes it in a better direction. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going to happen with it.
It's on the third reading calendar for the
Yes.
Senate?
Yes, circle. It was circled
Oh,
last.
circle.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm betting that means that he's working on some changes.
If you send us some talking points, maybe.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you, to our representatives.
Happy to do that.
And both that and who to contact,
Yeah,
what senators.
Okay. Okay.
I'll make a note of that. Just so you know, the senators who have golf courses in their districts all go to the
That's awesome.
And we've also made the representatives who represent our state park golf courses aware of this as well. And they also share many of the same concerns that we have. So more than anything, we just want to make sure that people are educated, especially legislators that are voting on this, about what it does, what the impacts would be, not only to state parks, but to the state of Utah that they represent.
Local economy. I would think if it's privatized and you have an authority that doesn't take into consideration what it does to the local.
It's, you know, and that's another really big impact of having this independent authority is it really eliminates a lot of the oversight that there currently is that public facilities should have. And that's a concern.
It takes, and with that, to your point, Claudia, it takes a lot of local control out of that feature.
That's what my fear would be, yeah.
Anything else?
These are doing amazing work.
Thank you, Bill.
Senate Bill 123 is out there, and it targets a whole bunch of state boards, eliminating a lot of state boards and changing a lot of things. It seems like the past couple of sessions are spending kind of an effort to simplify or to go back and get rid of things. Do you felt anything that would eliminate our state parks report?
Not that I've noticed, and I don't see that one on our list, but I'll take a look at it. I haven't heard of anything. I'm aware of the movement that you're talking about, but I haven't seen anything specific to state parks. Right. Yeah. You said that was 123?
Senate Bill 123. Anything else for Jeff? Okay. We're just a couple of minutes ahead of schedule. Chris, can we give you just a minute to introduce yourself, a little bit about kind of where you're from, and we're glad to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Jeff mentioned earlier, I've known most of you for quite a long time, and it's a pleasure to see you guys again. And for those who haven't met me, I'm originally from Brigham City up in the northern part of the state. Right. So, I grew up there, went to school at Utah State University in Logan. I got a degree in outdoor recreation as well as environmental studies. And then my first park ranger gig was out of Antelope Island. State Park. For everybody down south, this might disappoint you because this is the Northern Utah tour. But I spent 8 years out at Antelope Island. Half those years I was the assistant manager out there, so I learned a lot about administration and how to operate a larger style park. And then I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to get my first park manager gig out at Hiram State Park, right? Going from one of our largest state parks to one of the smallest state parks. And at that park, it was wonderful because I really got invested into the community at Hiram. It's such a small little park nestled right inside town, essentially, right? And coming from the environment where I had everything given to me to a park that really had to start over, right? Build those community relationships and do those things that were fun in the community. Getting a lot of community engagement was important to me, right? Giving a lot of people opportunities that maybe had never visited the park to come to the park as well. So from there, I spent only a couple short years there, and then I was promoted to the manager, East Canyon State Park up in Morgan County. So kind of right in that middle. It's like Goldilocks, right? Like it's not too big, not too small, it's just right. And level 2 park, it's a beautiful state park just on the backside of the Wasatch. And I spent almost 10 years there. So I've been with the division coming up on my 20th year this year. So that's a little bit of story about me, and just really excited to work hard in the North region. It's a big region, very demanding, as we know. And I just look forward to serving all the park managers and employees that are out there that may need some help with anything. But as we talked about too, what Jeff's kind of mentioned too, is that we've got some of the best employees in the state of Utah. They work hard and do a lot more than just what's required of them. And I'm hoping that we can continue to do that and add some more people to our mix up here in the North, and just continue to do it. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more. And obviously, if anybody who's up north and wants to go on a tour with us by Amber State Park, I'd be more than happy to take you out. Figure out. I've still got a lot to learn. There's so much more of this, especially with this position that I need to learn too. So I would definitely love some input from any of you, and anything you think that I might need, I would gladly accept, especially this change. Because to be honest with you, I'm a little scared, but I'm definitely excited to look forward to the opportunity. So.
Good. Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? And Wayne and Megan, appreciate you guys as well. Appreciate all you guys do at Helm the Region and here at the office and staff. Let's move on to Mike. You got some stuff for us as well.
Yes, thank you. So in your board packet, there's some rule amendments with some rules that we are proposing. And it's really two separate amendments, but they're within the same rule for commercial activities. So the first one, there's a small little change on that first page. The second page really under signature requirements. What that does, it adjusts the signature requirements for contract special use permits. So these rules were originally, I want to say it was the August board meeting, we actually approved new commercial activity rules in here. And we intended to have those rules reflect our current practice of who signs our contracts and agreements. But the way the rule was worded, we needed to amend it again. So right now, the way it was worded is that Jeff would be responsible to sign everything, including our special use permits. Now, as a division, we issue over 400, over 500 even the last year, special use permits throughout the state parks. And normally a park manager is able to sign those and then they're in effect. I don't think Jeff needs to, has the time to see and sign all of those. So we wanted just the language to reflect that. And so the idea is out of all the agreements, contracts we enter into, everything, Jeff signs everything or his designee. He can authorize someone else to sign it, other than special use permits. So special use permits can be signed by a park manager or program manager. And once they're signed, those become binding on the division. So like I said, that's been our practice. It's worked well. Also, the way the rule was worded would require park managers to sign every agreement. The ones Jeff signed, they'd have to sign it as well. We just want to simplify and not have to get multiple signatures, just the one. Again, like we've been doing, it's been our standard practice for at least the 11 plus years that I've worked for state parks. So are there any questions on that specific signature requirement changes? Okay. And then the other one, this is a really fun one. It's a new rule we're adding in. It's, you can see all that red down there, but limited commercial activities not requiring a permit. This actually comes, our rules, we have these rules that require permits for commercial activities in our parks. We have that for a number of reasons. And what we found, there were certain activities that we felt like wouldn't require a permit. However, our rules said, yes, you have to have a permit. So for a while we worked with, and we see it especially in the parks where it's, I mean, we've identified them as non-recreation activities, but really where a park visitor is requesting a service or something. We see it in our marinas where there's slip renters. Maybe they have a boat in the marina, they want some work done on the boat. Well, technically we have to issue a special use permit to the company to come in and work on their boat. We felt like that seemed, didn't seem necessary. And especially it's not a service being provided to the park or really to our visitors per se, but it's to the specific slip renter. So what this rule does is it means that we can choose not to issue a permit if it's for these specific limited activities. And it's really an activity where a park visitor is requesting the service. You can see the list there under subsection D, vehicle towing or wrecker services, automobile, boat, RV, or OHV repair services, taxi or ride shares, emergency medical services, and food delivery services. So, you know, if you're in your boat slip at Bear Lake and you want to order a pizza, that pizza delivery guy doesn't have to sign a special use permit, show insurance, things like that. And we looked at it. There were a few ways we thought we could probably approach it. We felt it was probably cleaner to add this rule and allow us that flexibility in our parks. So
if a park has food service, I mean, are you allowing still a visitor to order pizza to come on the premises and deliver?
I'm glad you asked that, Claudia. The rule actually says that the park manager is going to review their existing contracts, make sure there's no conflict there. So that kind of service in general, I would say, yes, it's up to the park manager though, to make that determination.
Visitors would know that they could have pizza guy come.
Yeah.
Even though
Exactly.
you buy a pizza at the little on-site restaurant.
And generally, I mean, our special use permits, we use the idea is multiple use of our park. We issue multiple permits for similar activities. And so we don't want to restrict people. You have to get repairs through this company only, or you have to, you know, you can't have a pizza delivered to you. It has to be from the concessionaire, but at the same time, we're trying to balance the concessionaire's interest and be careful with that.
So does the ride share, the pizza delivery guy, the OHV repair guy, do they have to have a park? Do you have to pay to get in the park to do that, or?
No, the language in the rule actually says that they do not have to, or we do not charge them. Oh, there it is. It's on the last page, 3. It says the park shall not charge the provider of the commercial activity. So yeah, we're not charging them. Yeah, this is a really quick thing. It's also limited in duration. I think we have a maximum of 3 days. The idea if they're, again, in a marina, if they're working on a boat, it might take a couple days. But if it's going to be longer term, again, we could issue a permit. But it's that kind of one and done type activities. I know Antelope Island, rideshare is an issue there, and I don't know if this could possibly help. The idea is this could help there, but you know, rideshares won't go into the park to pick someone up because they're charged the fee. And so anyway, we're just trying to help with those kinds of situations. And again, it's very limited specific. We feel like it'll be beneficial though to our park visitors.
Looks like it's beneficial. It also takes a burden off of our park managers.
Yeah.
Addresses a way, if there's a way to address this in a good way.
So
Yeah, exactly.
not to get in the weeds, but if an Uber is picking somebody up, that's pretty clear. But if an Uber's dropping somebody off, you've got to be able to collect I don't know if that needs to be spelled out or.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's up to the park manager, and we leave so much discretion to our park managers. And so the idea is that, you know, the language isn't required. It's not shall, it's may. But the idea in that situation, you're right, Joe. If they're coming into the park, someone needs to pay the day's fee to the person they're dropping off. Or if they're going to come pick someone up, then you're right.
I love that.
And I would think.
Could be the pedestrian fee.
Yeah.
That's true.
And I would think.
Pedestrian fees.
That's true.
Yeah, I would think with the language we have here, we could easily handle that, accommodate that.
Just one other little piece of background on this. So last session, I had a legislator come to me and want to run legislation to do this very thing. And anytime a legislator comes and wants to help us with legislation, I always beg and please let us do it on our end. And that way we maintain control and make sure that it really does fit what we do. And so his example was up at Bear Lake, and I think it was for him personally. He wanted to do some canvas work on his boat there in the marina, and it's kind of a gray area, and some of our park managers do better with gray areas, some of them don't do better, and this just clarifies what can and can't be done, and I think it makes a really good and needed change and clears up some confusion about how permitting works, and that representative is going to be very happy if you choose to approve this, so that we've taken care of it. Mike's done an excellent job.
Any other questions from Mike or Jeff on this? There's no further discussion. I would entertain a motion to approve this amendment. Get some suggested language. Yeah.
I have a motion to approve rural amendment R 651-635, commercial privileged and special uses of division managed park areas.
I've got a motion from Kevin. Is there a second? Okay, I've got a second from Alicia. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Buyer's remorse. As soon as I walk out of here, on the way home, I'll have buyer's remorse.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right, motion passes, and thank you. All right, next on our agenda is a little bit of training from Shane, and this little ominous when he comes in bringing a couple of volumes of
Yeah.
I got one. I got one.
No, I promise you, I won't do that.
We assume that's for our protection, not for our.
You're exactly right. I was going to say that I don't plan to get into those books, but I brought them along in case any of you have any specific questions. Take a look at those.
Scott was really on the mark. We asked specific questions about funding. We assume the same thing with law, but we probably won't go there. Yeah.
Okay. So I think I know most of you, but if I don't, I'm Shane Stroud. I'm one of the assistant attorneys general that works in the Natural Resources Division. I assist state parks and Division of Outdoor Recreation and water rights. But as I tell folks here in parks, you guys are my main squeeze. So I spend most of my time working with parks. And the reason I'm here today is to give you your annual GRAMA and OPMA training. So that's the Government Records Access Act, and then the Open Public Meetings Act training, which you need to do every year. So that's why I'm here. I'll try to make it as painless as possible and hopefully give you a good overview of how these two statutes apply to your work as Parks Board members. If you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask, and then I'll take time to answer questions at the end of the presentation as well. So part one, GRAMA. And I set this up as the what, who, where, when, why, and how. So what is GRAMA? Well, GRAMA is an acronym for the Government Records Access and Management Act, which is found in Utah Code Title 63G in Chapter 2. And GRAMA governs the handling, retention, and availability of Utah state government records. So every document that the state has is subject to GRAMA in one way or another. Now, some records might not be records under the Act, but most records are. And so everything, all these documents that are sitting around on the table today, they're all subject to GRAMA in one way or another. Records can be paper, they can be like memorandum, they can be electronic files like Word or PDF documents, or this PowerPoint presentation. They can be emails, they can be video recordings or audio recordings, or any other type of documentary material, regardless of form. So basically, anything you have on your computer or any piece of paper you have that's related to your work as a board member is probably a record that's subject to GRAMA. It's important to know that records that are subject to GRAMA are owned by the state. and they are subject to the state's retention policies and to the state's classification policies. Now, what records aren't subject to GRAMA, and therefore they are not owned by the state and they're not subject to retention or classifications? Usually notes to self. So if you scratch a note to yourself on a piece of paper, that's usually not a record. Personal communication. So if you send a personal communication, hey, I want to pick up dinner on the way home, what should I get? You send it from your work email. That's usually not subject to GRAMA, even though you're sending it from your work email. Daily calendar invites and appointments. Those usually aren't GRAMA records either, but there are exceptions to every rule. So before you conclude that something is not subject to GRAMA, it's usually best to sit and think about whether it could be connected to your work in any way, and if it is, to make sure you question whether it might be classified as a government record. So who does GRAMA apply to? It applies to all government entities and their employees, and to boards like the Board of State Parks and to board members. That's you. The records subject to GRAMA, like I said, are owned by the state, and they have to be retained according to the state's retention schedules and disclosed or not disclosed in accordance with the law. So the state has a general retention schedule for many common records. There are 526 categories at last count. That changes almost daily. I pulled that up this morning before I came down here, and I was surprised because it had changed even since I last took a look at it a couple of weeks ago. And then the division and the board have their own retention schedules that speak to specific documents. So the Board of State Parks actually has a retention schedule for its minutes. You have to retain those for 3 years, and they're public. So, and then division has a more extensive retention schedule that pertains to documents that Parks generates that are unique to Parks as an agency. And so you start with the general retention schedule and you work your way down if you have a question as to whether a document should be retained or how long it should be retained or whether it can be released to the public. So that's all very complicated, and GRAMA is a complicated statute. So for purposes of your work as board members, it's safest to assume that all records that you create in connection with your work are subject to GRAMA. And when you're in doubt about a record, don't delete it, but ask for guidance. And I'll give you some more information about who you can approach to help you with that. Oh, it's right here, Stacy Webster. Her email address is actually Stacy Stickler, but she's our current GRAMA officer. She replaced Tammy. She's fantastic. I've worked with her so far on some GRAMA requests, and you can reach out to her with questions. If you have any questions about GRAMA, I confirmed with her she was okay with that just yesterday. And if necessary, she'll pull me in and we can answer any questions you might have.
One question.
Sure.
So as board members, we have gotten certain requests via email, and we have by practice sent them on. So I'm assuming that the person I send it off to has not only the original email sent to me, but has response. So do I have to keep a record as well?
So when you receive an email asking for a record, have you just been sending the record, or have you been forwarding that to somebody to take care of?
Forwarding it to somebody else to take care of.
Okay. Who do you usually forward it to?
Scott or Dave.
Okay. I think if you forward it to Scott, you should assume that it's under control unless Scott reaches back out to you. Is that safe to assume, Scott?
Yeah, I'll always keep a copy of anything the board sends to me.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we have to make sure you get the original, not that we just got a request and I think you need to respond to it, but we need to send you the original that comes to us as well. Is that?
I would just forward the email that you received to Scott.
Okay.
The difference would be like if you have a separate correspondence to that individual, it's not, and Scott is the party to that, that would be something you need to preserve.
Maybe a phone call.
And you might get a phone call from somebody asking for a record. In that case, generally GRAMA requests need to be written either through an email to the GRAMA officer, or they can actually access a portal. It's a portal that's specific to GRAMA. So if you ever get a phone call asking for a record, I might approach either Stacy or Scott and ask how best you might direct them to file that request.
Question, what's the general retention schedule? What's the time period on that?
So it's different for each individual record. So even for various emails, some emails have to be retained forever. Other emails have to be retained for 3 years. Some emails can be destroyed immediately, but there are multiple classifications depending on the subject of the email, who sends the email, what it discusses. So it's really hard to kind of determine on the fly what the retention schedule might be for a particular email. So that's why it's important to just retain if in doubt. And my suggestion would be, and I'll get into this in a minute, is to try to either have a separate email account or a separate email folder with all of your board work emails. And then when you conclude your board service, just put all those emails into some sort of a file and give it to Stacy or give it to somebody at Park so we have those records. So does that answer your question? I know it's probably not a very satisfying answer, but I can't say an email is subject to 3 years. It might be one we have to retain forever. GRAMA always applies, but specific provisions are triggered by a request from a member of the public. And those are usually handled by our records officer, Stacy. When Parks receives a request, Stacy will collect the potentially responsive documents and review those to determine their classifications. So each record under GRAMA has a specific classification. Sometimes they're public, like this presentation. It's being presented in a public meeting to the public, and so it's absolutely public. If somebody called and requested this record, we would provide it to them. Other records are private or controlled or protected or otherwise restricted. That doesn't mean that somebody can't gain access to them, but it does limit their disclosure in certain circumstances. And those classifications can be tricky. So sometimes a public document contains protected information. So for example, an accident report. Oftentimes we'll redact accident reports to remove witnesses' email addresses. But the rest of the report might be public. And some people might be entitled to a record where others aren't. So somebody who was involved in an accident can usually get access to that report. But folks who were not involved in the accident usually can't. So the key is that you might not be able to determine the classification of a record until you have a request to determine who's requesting it and the purpose for the request. And we already kind of talked about this, but for board members, a request can take the form of an email or a call from a member of the public or a request from another government entity. And in that case, it sounds like Scott's your point person for that. So where are GRAMA records kept? They're kept in a variety of places. They could be on network drives, in email accounts, paper filing cabinets, also on your mobile phones, and sometimes on individual computers. Regardless of where they're kept, they're subject to GRAMA, and they have to be retained and disclosed according to the state's retention schedule. So just because you have if you have a text message chain with another board member about something you discussed during the board meeting, that could be subject to GRAMA, even though it's on your personal device. The easiest way to ensure compliance with GRAMA is to keep those records separate, if possible, from your personal files, and when in doubt, to retain them. So where possible, keep separate email accounts, separate computer drives, separate phones. If you can't, then store your communications in separate folders and keep your documents in their own computer folders. And don't forget the text messages might be subject to GRAMA as well. You might be asked to look on your personal device for those text messages. There's actually a bill going through right now. It's House Bill 97. And if that passes, next year, if you are asked about a record on your personal phone, you will be required to search your phone and provide a sworn statement that you searched your phone and provided records. So we're watching that bill closely. GRAMA is mandatory. State agencies and officers like you are required by law to comply. we don't have discretion as to whether or not we comply with GRAMA. It's the law. So we don't get to decide if we want to release a record or not, or whether we think this record's public or not. We have to follow the law. GRAMA advances the goals of government transparency while also ensuring certain records are kept private. So for example, medical records, records involving minors, sensitive financial information, and then records protected by other laws like the Freedom of Information Act. Sometimes those records are kept private under GRAMA. There are lots of different records that are subject to protection. GRAMA requests are common and frequent. We receive them sometimes daily. So you should expect at some point during your board service, you might be approached about a record. That said, don't be afraid. Most of the time, the records we get, requests we get, are public records, and they're just email communications or some other type of record, like a pamphlet about the, our program at the state. So if you are approached, chances are it's not going to be a very big deal. But thinking about that now means you won't have to worry about it later. You won't run afoul of the law. So as I was preparing this presentation, I was talking with some of my colleagues, and one of my colleagues in Forestry Fire presented a similar presentation to his clients earlier this year, and he showed this story. This is a story from KSL on December 30th of 2022, so very recently. And this involves a dispute down in St. George that actually led to the resignation of St. George's city manager. The St. George city manager approved a drag show on city property, and the city council was not happy with that. And there was some debate among the city council members via text message over whether or not that should have been approved. You could see some members of the council shared their disapproval over text messages, which KSL.com received through a government records request. Randall, who's the mayor, noted that they probably shouldn't be discussing this via text message because it could be subject to a GRAMA request. One of the topics of the text message chain was whether or not it was constitutionally permissible for the city manager to approve that drag show. Now, I don't share this with you to take any position on whether what the city manager did or did not do was permissible or wasn't, or whether the city council members had valid concerns or didn't. But what I can tell you is that St. George ended up paying the city manager, I think, about a $600,000 settlement because he threatened to sue the city. If I was a lawyer representing that city manager and I got my hands on this text message chain, I would be waiting to go to the bank. Because that is very powerful evidence that there were some doubts about whether what they were doing was permissible. And so just think about that when you're generating records. Those records will probably end up or could end up before the public eye. So you should always think about, how is this going to affect my agency? How would this look if the media got a hold of it, if a lawyer got a hold of it, if the public viewed it?
I think part of it had to do with discrimination too, didn't it?
I think there was I believe the question was whether or not the city manager had the discretion to, under the Constitution, on the First Amendment, to deny the permit. And there seemed to be some question there.
But I guess it comes down to also as those city council members, instead of text, if they would have just placed phone calls would not have been discoverable through GRAMA.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, if we're talking GRAMA, that's kind of a difference. Is think about your action and what that could lead to. Is picking up the phone is a little different than sending a text or an email.
Right.
If you still want to, pass on the same message or stick
I think that's a really good observation. Yeah, a phone call is not a GRAMA record. You're talking to somebody on the phone. A voicemail is a GRAMA record. A text message is a GRAMA record. An email is a GRAMA record. So how do you stay within the law? It's actually very easy. I know I've given you a lot of information, but just keep your emails and text messages and other communications professional, and assume it will eventually be seen by the media or the public. I don't want to scare you into not doing your work or not being able to speak candidly or freely. You should still do that. You're all professionals. I've never heard anything in any of these board members or from anyone at Parks that makes me question whether or not anything you've ever said would be problematic for the division. I don't think that's the case. So don't change what you're doing just because it might be GRAMA record, but do think about it. And if you pause and think, I always think about when I write something, what if this ends up before the public eye? Because it very well could. Keep documents associated with your board work separate from your personal documents. That's for your own convenience. If somebody calls you and asks you for the documents and they're kept stored separately, it's easy for you to say, well, I pulled all my records for you. Here they are. Go ahead and look for them, rather than having to pick through folders in your email inbox to try and find potentially responsive records. When in doubt, retain. If in doubt, ask. So if you don't know whether you should retain a document, ask us. I would recommend retaining all your documents. I have every email I've ever sent or received ever since the day I started working for the Attorney General's office. I keep everything. Because I don't want to have to worry about sorting through all of my records and deciding whether or not I should retain them or should retain them. And remember that state records on personal devices are still records subject to GRAMA. Mark drafts as draft, just makes it easier to classify those as draft later on. Organize your files and use clear naming conventions so that if you have to search for them, you can easily find them later. And then, like I said, assume everything you do is subject to GRAMA. Final thoughts. The Division of State Archives and Records has a great video that takes a real deep dive into all the various sections of the statute. You can Google Utah Division of Archives and Records GRAMA training, and I put the training videos link if you want to watch an hour-long presentation about GRAMA. I'm sure you do. Enjoy that. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. GRAMA can be complicated, but we're here to help you. And then just do your best. And remember, the legislative intent is not to make this an arduous process. It's just to keep things transparent. Okay, before I move on, any questions about GRAMA specifically? All right, Open and Public Meetings Act. So the Open and Public Meetings Act applies. OPMA is the acronym for that, and it's found in Title 52 in Part 4. So this act applies to all meetings of certain government committees, boards, commissions, like the Parks Board. The reason it exists is to advance a policy that the state and its agencies do their work openly and conduct their deliberations openly before the public eye. OPMA is actually a rather complicated law. There are a lot of moving parts to it, but in general, it requires 4 things. Notice of meetings, proper notice of meetings under certain timelines and on certain websites, providing the ability for the public to attend, transacting business in an open and transparent manner, and good records keeping. Now, for your purposes, the noticing of those meetings, providing and noticing the provisions related to public attendance, and the record keeping portion are all taken care of by either Paul and our IT department or by Melanie. So you really don't have to worry about any of that. All you have to do is make sure that you actually transact your board work in board meetings or in other meetings and not outside of those meetings. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So when does OPMA apply? Well, it applies to meetings of the board. And the act defines a meeting as a convening of the public body with a quorum present, including workshops or executive session, whether you're in person or you're attending electronically, like we have some of the board members doing today, for the purposes of discussing or receiving comments about or acting on a member over which you have jurisdiction. So that's a lot of words, but basically what it means is if you're doing any of the board's work at any given time, and there are more than 3 of you present, that should be done in a meeting, or it's probably defined as a meeting under the Open Public Meetings Act, and it should be properly noticed. There should be minutes taken, etc. Now, meetings do not include chance meetings or social meetings. So, for example, if you run into 6 other board members at the farmer's market on a Saturday morning. There is more than a quorum present, but it's just a chance social meeting. Just don't do any board work and you're fine. It also doesn't apply to social meetings. So for example, dinners that you have sometimes in connection with your board work. It also does not apply to gatherings where there's no quorum present. So if there are 3 or fewer board members, then the Open Public Meetings Act does not apply. And generally it doesn't apply where you don't spend public funds and you don't take any action. So for example, when you go to these various, like if you went to Dead Horse Point and meetings down in southern Utah, you're there for board work, but you're there to learn about what the park is doing. You're there to talk to employees of the park, and because you're not expending any public funds at that meeting, you might have expended some public funds in connection to get there, but you're not expending public funds in any action you're taking at that meeting, and you're not taking any action as a board. OPMA would not apply. It's just important that you don't take action while you're there. So when and where does OPMA apply? Well, it applies to all open meetings, which OPMA defines as a workshop or an executive session of a public body in which a quorum is present, unless it's closed. So this is an open meeting. The public can phone in or attend electronically, or they could be here in person with us today if they wanted to. And they can listen in and observe exactly what the board's doing. Now, the Open Public Meetings Act also applies to closed meetings, but it only allows for meetings to be closed under very specific circumstances. So a meeting is closed to the public. It's only the board that's able to attend, or certain times invited guests to that closed meeting. To close a meeting, you have to start with an open meeting, and then 2/3 of a quorum have to vote to close it. And it can only be closed for certain reasons. So, for example, the discussion of pending litigation, discussions about the values of real property that the board or division might be considering purchasing, or discussions about the health or competence of an individual. There are a number of reasons why you might close a meeting, actually dozens of reasons why, but they're very specific. So if you ever believe something should be discussed in a closed meeting, just get in touch with us about that, and we can look to see whether or not it's permissible to close a meeting for that purpose. And then we can agenda that so that the public understands there would be a portion of the meeting that's closed. If a meeting is closed to the public, the chair has to announce why the meeting's being closed, where the meeting's going to be held, and the names of those that voted to close the meeting. And then the board has to keep a recording of the meeting and state on the recording where and when it was held and the names of those present. You probably won't have occasion to close very many of your meetings, but if you do, it's important you do it correctly, because most of the ways people get in trouble, or boards or commissions or committees get in trouble under the Open Public Meetings Act, is considering things or doing work in closed meetings that should be open, because almost everything should be done.
We may have had to discuss some real estate in those meetings.
Right. That's probably the most you'd ever do. It might also come up if you had a board member that was having medical problems that was preventing them from fulfilling board service, and you needed to discuss that. You could do that in a closed meeting so that sensitive medical information was not shared out, with the public. Important thing to know is resolutions, rules, contracts, or appointments must be confirmed or passed in open meetings. So you might discuss a real estate contract during a closed meeting, but when you approve the actual contract itself, that's done in an open meeting, because generally, under GRAMA, final contracts are public documents. So why do you need to know this? Well, like GRAMA, we're required by law to comply with Open Public Meetings Act, and a failure to comply could result in being overturned or potentially in criminal liability. So now don't be scared by that. That's very rare. It would only be if you were doing something clearly wrong that would ever happen, and I don't see that risk being very real. But the Open Public Meeting Act ensures that the process is open and transparent, and it increases trust in the board and division. That's the primary purpose for the act. And following the Open Public Meetings Act ensures good record keeping. So it ensures matters are discussed properly and recorded on audio and video and in meeting minutes. It ensures votes of board members are properly tallied. Ensures discussions are available for later review, and ensures members of the public can easily access and understand what the board's done in a particular meeting. So when in doubt about whether the board is meeting, consult with the division. That probably won't be a problem for most of you because most of the work you do is in quarterly board meetings. Consult the electronic meeting policy that you passed during your last meeting. If you have questions about electronic meetings, and I actually have copies of that resolution for you guys, so you can easily reference that. I also included a copy of the parliamentary procedures, Robert's Rules of Order, that discuss how you can make motions and how those should proceed. If you have that quick reference, and I'll just pass these around. There's copies of policy and of those Robert's Rules of Orders for each of them. If the board anticipates a meeting is going to be closed, make sure you identify that possibility in advance and then work with Melanie so that can be agended, and you're going to have the folks you need in order to close the meeting. Remember, you have to have 2/3 of the folks in attendance in order to close the meeting. You don't have that many that can attend, then you can't close the meeting. It's important to plan for that possibility.
Roll call, is that you have to identify?
Yeah, you would want to. The easiest way to do that, and I have this a little bit later, is to take votes by roll call, just so that's recorded in accordance with the act. Ensure the division has sufficient time to notice the meeting. Again, this isn't a big problem, but there are requirements under the rules. We have to notice meetings. I believe it's 24 hours in advance. I think Melanie could probably speak better to those timelines, but that's usually not going to come up as long as we have, a few days notice that something needs to be put on a public notice site and posted. And then during meetings, follow Robert's rules. You guys already do that. I've listened to your meetings. You do a great job making motions. Make your motions clear. Melanie does a great job of providing you with suggested motions, and that's exactly how they should be made.
So we really appreciate that. That's good.
Try not to talk over each other. It's harder, especially if you're listening to a recording and just audio, especially. It can be tough to tell what's being said. Stick to the agenda. So this is another thing that the Open Public Meetings Act requires is in order for you to take action on an item, it needs to be on the agenda. So it's not on the agenda such that the public would have notice of what you're planning to do. You probably can't take action on that during that meeting. So it's important if you intend or if you want to take action on something to make sure you give Melanie a heads up and Jeff too, so that we can get that on the agenda. And then remember, everything you say is subject to the public eye. Final thoughts. Don't fear the Open Public Meetings Act. You're already doing what's required. But if you're ever in doubt about something to do with how you're conducting your meetings or how something should be noticed or whether you can close a meeting or whether it should be agended or anything at all, please reach out and we can look at that more closely and make sure that we're within the law. The biggest way to run afoul of Open Public Meetings Act is to take action outside of a meeting or to close a meeting that should be open. So to avoid those pitfalls, take action only during your quarterly board meetings or if you call another meeting. And be sure to discuss the need to close meetings in advance. Take votes by roll call. Whenever holding an electronic meeting, it makes recording the votes much easier. Don't conduct board business at social gatherings or during visits to parks. Keep those social or focused on learning. Doesn't mean you can't discuss your work as board members, and it doesn't mean you can't discuss something that you want to later bring up at the meeting. But don't take action on that during those visits. Wait until you're in an open board meeting to discuss those so that they take place in an open meeting that's accessible to the public. And then finally, the Open Public Meetings Act changes every year. So don't be surprised if next year's training includes new or different requirements. One bill that's moving through the legislature this year, and I have no reason to suspect it will not pass. So I think it will become law, is that next year, every board and commission will need to allow a portion of the meeting open to public comment. Now, that could be as simple as reserving a period of time at the end of the meeting where you say, does anyone with the public have a comment or something they would like to say or discuss, and leaving 10, 15 minutes for that possibility. I think that will probably become law, so that's something you should plan to incorporate, probably, if not at your May board meeting, then probably at your meeting in the late summer, early fall. Questions?
Is the training required each year, calendar year, and is there a time frame in the year, just a month?
It says every year. It doesn't.
So anywhere in the year.
Yeah, so you won't have to do this again unless you want to. You can do this. You don't have to do this again until 2020.
So I served on another board and was told that I needed to go to the auditor's little website and do this training and get a certificate. So do you certify that we've had this training, and are we reported to somewhere that this board's had this training? I just don't understand.
So
how many times do I have to have this training from different boards?
You probably will have to sit through it for every board you sit on, because now for GRAMA, generally, GRAMA actually only requires that we perform the training for GRAMA officers, but I think it's good for all of us to have a good idea of what GRAMA says and how it applies. Open and Public Meetings Act only specifies that we should do this training once a year. Now, as far as whether I need to certify you or whether you need to go to the auditor for that training, I've not heard of that requirement before, but I'll look it up. And if that's something you need to do, I will make sure you
Much
do that.
simpler than this, like a little 5-minute run through and answer some questions and you get a certificate.
Depends on which one you do. Because I did one that was really, it was like 40 minutes. It was terrible. It was really long.
The auditor's pushing to have that be specific to what they provide, but in a lot of cases, what they're providing is pretty pathetic.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of a little move on their part to have control of this.
I have not. No, I'll look it up though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to, I haven't seen this, so I don't know what information it shared, but I really tried to pare down the information I'm sharing with you to what would be more specific to the Parks Board. You know, you're not a board that's considering things like hiring people, you know, all the time, or considering, you know, medical problems of individuals such that you're constant, or considering pending litigation, such as constantly bouncing back and forth between open and closed. But I have participated in as council and boards where that's been an issue, and it can become really complicated. But I just don't see that really applying here. So I'm hopeful that this is more of an overview as to how this would apply to your work as Parks Board.
And the other question I have is another document I was required to sign and have actually notarized is conflict of interest. Are we supposed to have that as this board as well, or?
Well, I was going to send those out to everybody along with it, but I don't think you have. I had never found any in the past. Did you ever find any in the past?
I don't think we ever knew we had to.
So
the conflict of interest report.
you should probably fill out
find any.
conflict of interest.
Yeah.
I know we've done it in the past.
Yeah, I think we've done it in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe it's in like, as a new board member, when you come on.
That's generally when you fill that form out.
Okay.
It's changed. No, I don't believe it's required annual. I think it's when you become a board member.
Okay, only when they become a new one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or when they re-up their service.
Okay, maybe.
So I have a question for you with Robert's Rules of Order. I was chairing a meeting just down the hall here in the big room, and I had people kind of sneak out during the meeting to the point to where I looked out and we didn't even have a majority to adjourn the meeting officially.
Why are you not still there?
I know, you know, and I guess I like your counsel here at the bottom of the page. When in doubt, do what's fair and equitable, respecting the wishes of the majority. But I guess should have been said, hey, before you leave, we need to, or what's your thoughts and something like that.
So, I mean, I guess there would be,
It's kind of weird.
technically, maybe you're still in session.
Right.
But Robert's rules of orders are meant, Robert's rules of order are meant mostly to ensure that when you take action, that action is properly conducted and recorded, so that every board member has the opportunity to consider what's before the board. If they want an amendment, they have the opportunity to try and amend, and then they have an opportunity to voice whether they're in favor of it or against it. And so as long as you're ensuring that your action items that require board votes are subject to those Robert's Rules of Orders, that's the most important thing. The fact that you might lose quorum or you can't adjourn, I mean, I guess you could argue that the meeting would go on, you know, for the rest of eternity, but I don't think you need to worry so much about that. As long as you had a quorum when you were taking action on your action items. Now, with that said, I was watching a legislative committee hearing just this week, and during the committee hearing, they lost a quorum, and they had to go round up one of the senators in the hallway, pull him back in, so they can vote on advancing the bill out of committee. If you're going to take action on an item, make sure you have a quorum.
That was our good golf though, wasn't
That
it?
was. Finally found Senator Bramble.
He had to come back.
Yeah.
I've wondered if you even have to have a motion to adjourn. Is that something that is required? And I know, I've often wondered that. Do you have to have that motion or does it have to be seconded?
So most of the boards I've been involved with do have motions to adjourn, but I very rarely heard seconds to those motions because most of the time people are just ready to go. I think it's a good practice to make a motion to adjourn, just so you have that definite end to your meeting.
Yeah.
And that's recorded in your meeting minutes and it's recorded on the recordings.
So the motion adjourn is not debatable, right? And
That's what they say in legislative committee
Well, I
meetings.
think it's not debatable.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that motion is
Right.
acceptance, debatable. it's
Yeah, I
not
don't think there would
everything
be a motion to amend, a motion to adjourn, motion to debate. It's just a motion to end it.
but in a lot of cases, I see a lot of boards do not require a vote on that.
Yeah, the boards I'm on do.
But I think that's
Yeah,
generally
and we
good
have
practice.
and we do a second.
I don't think you would ever be challenged on that, but I think it's a good practice. And the reason why I think it's good practice is that if somebody were to argue, hey, wait a second, they never adjourned, what happened after that? Did they discuss something that should have been before the public eye? I mean, all of you would say, no, we really wrapped up the meeting at that time. And it would probably, nothing would come of it. But if you've made a motion to adjourn, it's much easier to say, no, we had adjourned, nothing happened after that point. So it just marks a nice clean end.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks for not opening the books. We'll look forward to this meeting.
It actually wasn't that bad, so good job.
That's what attorneys always like to hear. It wasn't that bad.
Sometimes it's all we can ask.
Especially since you don't bill us.
Maintain a low standard. That's always easy.
Oh, well, about that.
My motto in life. Okay, we're getting close to the end of our agenda. The next action items looking at our upcoming meeting schedule. And I think we've already looked at dates. Yep. We lost our Melanie, but May 24th and 25th, is that correct?
Yes.
And then did we have an August 9th and 10th?
Yes.
Yeah. We just don't know where yet.
We had some discussion on some of that. Let's see.
The August, we were going to Bryce Canyon.
Yeah, looking at getting
Very
on
good.
Kodachrome or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I had Northern Utah in August.
And it's Southern Utah for the May one.
Okay.
It's one I wrote down.
So August is gonna be Bryce.
That's what
I had
remember,
Box
but I don't
Elder
know. Did you have Box
for-
Elder?
There we go. August,
That's what we did.
Box
okay.
Elder, yeah.
When is the centennial for Bryce?
It is in June.
In June.
So August is Box Elder.
Okay, and then our fourth quarter, I had some confusion on my calendar, but it was October 31st, November 1st.
I have November 1st and 2nd.
November 1st and
And
2nd.
Escalante and Kodachrome
Okay.
is what I had.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
12 is what I wrote down.
Our caterer's running behind. So we'll have to do presentations first. That's the
So-
caterer's running.
Where are we going in May?
So May, Southern Utah?
That's what I have.
Southwest region.
Okay.
Wayne, did you get that?
Yeah, Wayne, are you
Yep.
going to be from EDS?
He's still smiling on down there.
Yeah, I'm still smiling. We'll plan on that.
Okay. We'll figure that out.
Yeah, you too.
Yep. Be all over that. And then Box Elder.
In August.
Okay. You gotta figure that out. Put on a show. Yeah, there we go. Did you get that in meeting minutes? You're gonna put on a show in Box Elder County.
Oh, yeah. The Joan and Chris show, huh?
Oh, yeah, Joan and Chris show. And then November 1st and 2nd.
We're gonna market it like that, so now you're all
Yeah.
gonna.
Okay, and then Kodachrome Escalante, November 1st and 2nd. And we'll take some notes or polls to see how many people pronounce that Escalante word differently.
Locals say it's go out.
I'm with you. Okay. So we got that. Anything else anybody wants to bring up? Yeah, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, Rosa. I got a motion from Joan, second from Brent. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? So, you'll do the electronic delay. All right, motion passed. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
And Scott, you got to remember a photo.
Yeah.